I'm Natalie, 34, and until last year, I thought I had the perfect marriage. My husband, James, a successful lawyer, was everything I ever wanted. We had a beautiful home, successful careers, and what I believed was trust. But one night changed everything. After dinner, my husband asked me to wait in the car while he picked up something he forgot at the restaurant. Something felt off. The suspicion that had been building for months finally pushed me to action. Instead of waiting, I followed him. What I discovered began 5 years of secret investigation that would reveal my entire marriage was built on lies. Where are you watching from? If this sounds familiar, hit like and subscribe, because the truth I'm about to share might save you years of pain. My story begins 7 years ago in Boston. I had moved there from Chicago to pursue my career as a graphic designer. The city was vibrant, full of opportunities, and I was excited about this new chapter in my life. I had just landed a position at a prestigious marketing firm and was determined to make my mark in the industry. I met James at a charity gala for children's education. I wasn't even planning to attend until my colleague got sick and offered me her ticket. James was standing alone by the bar, looking handsome in his tailored suit. He had this confidence about him that immediately caught my attention. When our eyes met across the room, I felt something I hadn't experienced before, an immediate connection. "You look like you could use some company," he said when he approached me. His voice was deep and warm, his smile genuine. We spent the entire evening talking, discovering we had so much in common, from our love for old black and white films to our shared dream of traveling through Europe one day. Our romance was a whirlwind. After just 3 months of dating, James took me to the public garden where we had our first date and proposed under the willow trees. I was swept off my feet. Everyone said we were rushing, but when you know, you know. We were married within a year at a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by friends and family. The early years of our marriage were blissful. We bought our first home together in a charming neighborhood in Cambridge. It needed work, but we spent weekends painting walls and assembling furniture, building our little sanctuary together. James was supportive of my career, celebrating every new client and promotion. I was equally supportive of his ambitions at the law firm, understanding when he needed to work late preparing for important cases. James was always driven, but things shifted when he was assigned to a high-profile corporate case about 3 years into our marriage. The case was a stepping stone to partnership, and he threw himself into the work completely. His hours at the office grew longer. Weekend work became normal. I was proud of his dedication, but also noticed how our time together was shrinking. It was subtle at first, small changes in his behavior that I dismissed as stress from work. His phone, which was previously often left carelessly on countertops, was now always in his pocket. He changed all his passwords, claiming it was a security requirement from the firm. Sometimes he would step outside to take calls, saying they were sensitive client matters. "You're being paranoid," I told myself. "This is what happens when you marry an ambitious attorney." I believed in our foundation. We had built this life together, chosen each other, made promises. I trusted him completely. My best friend Amy was the first to voice concerns. We were having lunch when James called to cancel our dinner plans for the third time that week. "Nat, don't you think something's off?" Amy asked after I hung up. "He's working toward partnership," I defended. "It's temporary." Amy didn't push, but I caught the worry in her eyes. Then there was Thomas, one of James's colleagues. Whenever we met at firm events, he seemed uncomfortable around me, avoiding eye contact and making excuses to move to another conversation. Once, after several drinks at the firm's holiday party, he almost said something about seeing James, but quickly stopped himself when James approached. I dismissed it at the time, but looking back, that should have been a red flag. The first time James asked me to wait in the car was 2 months before the incident that changed everything. We had been at a business dinner with his clients. As we were leaving, he suddenly patted his pockets and frowned. "I think I left my wallet at the table," he said. "Wait in the car. I'll just be a minute." I offered to come with him, but he insisted I stay, saying it would be quicker if he went alone. He was gone for 15 minutes. When he returned, he was slightly flushed and explained that he had to search under the table and chairs. I accepted his explanation, even though something felt off. As months passed, the distance between us grew. We still had moments of connection, date nights, weekend trips, intimate conversations, but there was an underlying tension that hadn't been there before. It was like living with a part-time stranger. The man I loved was still there, but increasingly there was another version of James that seemed to exist in the spaces between our time together. I tried to talk to him about it once, asking if everything was okay between us. He took my hands in his, looked me in the eyes, and assured me that I was everything to him, that work was just demanding right now. His eyes seemed sincere, and I wanted to believe him. That night he made love to me with an intensity that seemed to reaffirm his words. Yet in the morning, the distance returned as quickly as it had disappeared. Despite the growing signs, I wasn't prepared to believe my marriage wasn't what it seemed. I had invested my heart, my dreams, and my future in us. The thought that this might all be built on lies was too painful to consider. So I chose to believe in us, in him, even as the evidence mounted that something wasn't right. Looking back, I realize I was seeing exactly what I wanted to see. A busy husband dedicated to his career, a solid marriage with normal ups and downs, a future that was still unfolding according to plan. But life has a way of forcing you to confront reality, even when you're not ready for it. And my moment of truth was waiting just around the corner on what should have been one of the happiest nights of our marriage. It was our 5th wedding anniversary, and James had made reservations at Sorellina, an upscale Italian restaurant where we had celebrated our 1st anniversary. I spent hours getting ready, choosing a burgundy dress he had once complimented, styling my hair in loose waves, and applying makeup that enhanced rather than masked. I wanted to look beautiful for him to reignite the spark that seemed to be fading. When James came home from work to change, he brought a bouquet of white roses, my favorites. His gesture gave me hope that tonight would be different, that we could reconnect. He seemed attentive as we got ready, complimenting my appearance and reminiscing about previous anniversaries. The restaurant was everything I remembered: ambient lighting, white tablecloths, the soft murmur of conversation, and the occasional clink of fine glassware. We were seated at a corner table, intimate and romantic. James ordered an expensive bottle of Barolo, and we toasted to 5 years together. But as dinner progressed, I noticed James was distracted. He checked his phone repeatedly, angling it away from me when reading messages. He seemed to scan the restaurant regularly, and I caught him making eye contact with our waiter in a way that felt loaded with unspoken communication. During the main course, James excused himself to use the restroom. He was gone for nearly 10 minutes. When he returned, there was a subtle change in his demeanor, a slight flush to his cheeks, a brightness to his eyes that hadn't been there when we were talking. The waiter approached our table several times when it wasn't necessary, and during one visit, he slipped James a small folded piece of paper with our dessert menu. James quickly pocketed it when he thought I wasn't looking. After dessert and coffee, James paid the bill and we headed to the parking lot. The night air was crisp, carrying the first hints of autumn. I was walking slightly ahead when James suddenly stopped. "Damn it," he muttered, patting his pockets. "I think I left my phone at the table." My heart sank. This felt like a replay of the wallet incident. "I'll come with you," I offered. No, he said quickly. "Just wait in the car. I'll only be a minute. Turn the heat on if you're cold." He handed me the car keys and jogged back toward the restaurant. I stood there, keys in hand, feeling a cold certainty settle over me. This wasn't about a forgotten phone. I got into the car and waited, watching the seconds tick by on the dashboard clock. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. My mind was racing. All the small inconsistencies of the past months were suddenly connecting into a pattern I couldn't ignore. 10 years of trust battled with 5 minutes of suspicion. Trust lost. I got out of the car, locked it, and walked quickly back to the restaurant. Through the large windows, I could see most of the dining area, but not our corner table. I entered casually, as if I had forgotten something myself. Instead of heading to our table, I took a detour that gave me a view of the bar area. There was James not at our table looking for a phone, but seated at the bar next to a woman I had never seen before. She was attractive in an effortless way. Long dark hair, elegant posture, and expensively dressed. They were leaning toward each other, engaged in what appeared to be an intimate conversation. I froze, unable to move or breathe properly. My purse contained my phone, and without thinking, I took it out and began recording. I couldn't hear what they were saying from my position, but I captured their body language, the way he touched her hand, the comfortable familiarity between them. I moved closer, pretending to look for something in my purse, positioning myself behind a large floral arrangement where I could hear fragments of their conversation. "Can't keep doing this, James," I heard the woman say. Her voice was tinged with frustration. "Stephanie, we've talked about this," James responded in a hushed tone I had never heard him use with me. "It's complicated. You know how much you mean to me." "It's been almost 3 years," she replied. "I'm tired of being the secret." My stomach lurched. 3 years. Half our marriage. James reached for her hand again. "Just a little more time. I promise." I had seen and heard enough. Feeling like I might be sick, I retreated quickly to the car, slipping out before either of them noticed me. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely get the key in the ignition. For 15 minutes, I sat there trying to compose myself. My mind raced through possibilities, explanations, scenarios that could make what I had seen innocent. There were none. When James finally returned to the car, he was carrying a small gift bag that he hadn't had before. His expression was perfectly normal, as if he hadn't just shattered my world. "Found it," he said casually, settling into the driver's seat. "And I also picked up your anniversary gift. I had arranged for the restaurant to hold it until tonight." He handed me the bag. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a heart charm. The kind of thoughtful gift the old James would have chosen. "It's beautiful." I managed to say the words, feeling like glass in my throat. On the drive home, James chatted about work, upcoming plans, normal things. I responded automatically, playing the role of unsuspecting wife while inside everything was crumbling. I wondered if he could hear my heart breaking over the sound of the car engine. That night I lay awake beside him, listening to his steady breathing, looking at the stranger I had married. The tears came silently, soaking my pillow. I didn't know who he really was anymore, but one thing was becoming clear. I needed to know the full truth. Not just fragments overheard in a bar, but everything. As the first light of dawn filtered through our bedroom curtains, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront him yet. I wouldn't give him the chance to craft more lies or minimize what I had seen. Instead, I would uncover the whole truth methodically and carefully. I would find out exactly who I had married and what our life together really was. I closed my eyes, not in sleep, but in resolution. This was just the beginning. The morning after our anniversary, I waited until James left for work before I fell apart completely. I sat on our kitchen floor, back against the refrigerator, and let the sobs rack my body. For 1 hour, I allowed myself to feel every ounce of the betrayal, the shock, the humiliation. Then I got up, washed my face, and began to plan. If James had been living a double life for years without my knowledge, confronting him now would only lead to denials, partial truths, or carefully constructed lies. I needed evidence, irrefutable proof of whatever was happening, and I needed to protect myself in the process. That afternoon, I went to an electronics store in a mall across town, somewhere I knew James or his colleagues would never shop. The young sales associate looked concerned when I explained what I needed: a voice-activated recorder, a small camera, and a GPS tracker. "Everything okay, ma'am?" he asked clearly, wondering if I was some kind of stalker. "Just security measures," I lied. "We've had some issues in the neighborhood." I paid in cash and used a fake name when asked for warranty information. The person I was becoming scared me a little, calculating, suspicious, secretive, but I reminded myself I hadn't created this situation. I was just responding to it. When I got home, I called Amy. I needed to tell someone to make this real and to have support for what I was about to do. "He did what?" Amy nearly shouted when I told her about the restaurant. I could almost see her pacing in her apartment, running her hand through her curly hair, like she always did when agitated. "I'm going to find out everything, Amy. The whole truth." There was a pause on the line. "Nat, are you sure that's the right approach? Maybe you should just confront him or suggest counseling. And give him a chance to delete evidence, create more lies. No, I need to know what I'm dealing with first." "I understand that," Amy said carefully, "but this investigation thing, it could consume you. And what if you find things you're not prepared to handle?" Her concern was valid, but my mind was made up. "I have to know. I'll be careful, I promise." Amy sighed. "Okay, I'm here for whatever you need. Just check in with me regularly, all right? Don't go down this rabbit hole alone." After we hung up, I created a detailed plan. First, I needed access to James's phone. The opportunity came that evening when he took a shower. His phone was on the nightstand face down. My hands trembled as I picked it up. As expected, it was locked. But I had watched him enter his passcode enough times to have memorized it, his birth year followed by mine. A little piece of us, protecting his secrets. I quickly installed a tracking app that would show me his location history, disguising it as a system utility that wouldn't appear in his app list. Next, I placed the small voice recorder in his car, carefully securing it under the passenger seat, where it wouldn't be discovered during routine cleaning. Over the next few weeks, I began collecting data. James's location history showed regular visits to an address in Beacon Hill, an upscale neighborhood about 20 minutes from our home. He went there at least twice a week, usually claiming to be working late at the office or meeting clients for drinks. The voice recorder captured several phone conversations, many with Stephanie. Their exchanges were intimate, discussing dinner plans a weekend away and various complaints about her job. While James was at work, I searched our home office, looking through his files and desk drawers. In the back of a locked drawer, the key was hidden in his golf bag. I found a separate phone, basic not smart, with only one contact saved S. The text history made me physically ill. Terms of endearment I thought were only for me. Plans made while I believed he was working. Promises about a future together. As my investigation continued, I found myself transforming. I lost weight, unable to stomach full meals. Sleep became a luxury I rarely enjoyed, lying awake analyzing every detail I had discovered, wondering what else I might find. My work suffered. I missed deadlines and turned in projects that were below my usual standard. My boss called me into his office one afternoon. "Natalie, is everything okay at home? Your work has been inconsistent lately." I manufactured a story about family health problems, promising to get back on track. He was understanding, but his concern was a wake-up call. I couldn't let this consume me entirely. Around the same time, I made another discovery. Stephanie was a legal assistant at James's firm. Through some careful social media research, I found her profile. There she was, the woman from the restaurant, in photos at firm events, some including James in the background. They were careful, never standing too close in official photos, but now that I knew what to look for, their connection was obvious in subtle glances and body positioning. The more evidence I collected, the more my pain transformed into a cold, focused anger. This wasn't just a fling or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was calculated deception maintained day after day, while he came home to me, slept beside me, and continued to build what I thought was our life together. Amy became increasingly worried. We met for coffee one Saturday while James was supposedly golfing. He was at Stephanie's apartment, according to the tracker. "You don't look well," Amy said bluntly. "You've lost too much weight and you've got these dark circles under your eyes. This investigation is killing you, Nat." "What choice do I have?" I asked, stirring my untouched coffee. "Just pretend everything is normal while he makes a fool of me." "No, but there has to be a healthier way to handle this. Have you considered talking to someone professional, a therapist maybe?" I hadn't, but Amy's suggestion took root. The next week, I found a therapist specializing in betrayal trauma, Dr. Sarah Jenkins. Our first session was brutal, laying out the evidence I had collected, admitting how my life had narrowed to this single focus of uncovering James's deception. "What do you hope to gain from continuing to investigate?" Dr. Jenkins asked, after listening to my story. The question caught me off guard. The truth. I need to know everything. And then what? She pressed. What will you do with this truth once you have it all? I hadn't thought that far ahead. The investigation had become its own purpose. I guess, decide whether to stay or go, whether there's anything left to save. Dr. Jenkins nodded. That's a start. But while you're gathering evidence against your husband, don't forget to gather strength for yourself. Whatever you discover, whatever you decide, you'll need to be whole and healthy to move forward. Her words stayed with me. I began making small changes, forcing myself to eat regular meals, exercising to help with sleep, setting boundaries around my investigation time so it didn't consume every waking moment. I still collected evidence, but I was also collecting pieces of myself that had started to scatter in the wake of James's betrayal. As my third month of investigation began, I discovered something that took my breath away. Financial irregularities that suggested the deception went deeper than I had imagined. While organizing tax documents, I found evidence of a credit card I didn't know existed. Accessing our online banking, which shared passwords with our joint accounts, I discovered statements for this card going back years. The charges told their own story. Jewelry stores, hotels, restaurants, far more expensive than we typically frequented. Weekend getaways when James had told me he was at conferences. A consistent pattern of expense that represented an entire shadow relationship being maintained alongside our marriage. But the truly shattering discovery came when I decided to confront Thomas James's uncomfortable colleague. I arranged to run into him at a coffee shop he frequented, making it seem coincidental. After some awkward small talk, I decided to be direct. Thomas, I know something's going on with James. I've seen him with Stephanie. Thomas paled visibly, nearly spilling his coffee. Natalie, I don't want to get involved. I think you already are involved by knowing and saying nothing, I countered, keeping my voice steady. How long has it been happening? Thomas looked around the coffee shop, clearly uncomfortable. Look, I didn't want to be put in this position. James is my colleague, but what he's doing, it's not right. Please, Thomas, I need to know. He sighed deeply. It's been going on for at least 3 years that I know of, since that big Macintosh corporate case. Just with Stephanie? I asked, dreading the answer. Thomas couldn't meet my eyes. Stephanie's the main one, but there have been others. It's kind of known around the office. I'm sorry, Natalie. I should have said something sooner. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Others. Multiple women. A reputation at the office. The humiliation was almost unbearable. Does everyone know? Am I the only one who didn't? My voice cracked despite my efforts to remain composed. Not everyone, Thomas said quickly. Just a few people have noticed patterns. Most people think you two have an arrangement or something. James is careful, but not careful enough. I thanked Thomas for his honesty and left, before I completely fell apart. In my car, I screamed until my voice gave out, pounding the steering wheel until my hands hurt. The pain was physical now, a tangible ache in my chest like something was being torn out. That night when James came home, I looked at him with new eyes, not just as a cheater, but as someone capable of systematic, extensive deception that had apparently become common knowledge among his peers. He kissed my cheek, asked about my day, and settled in to watch TV as if everything was normal. The performance was flawless. I wondered how I had ever believed it was genuine. Later that week, I discovered a secret email account on a shared laptop James rarely used anymore. The password was saved in the browser, giving me access to hundreds of messages exchanged with not just Stephanie, but 2 other women over the past few years. The relationships overlapped. The lies were coordinated, carefully managed like business projects. My health continued to deteriorate from the stress. I lost more weight. Panic attacks became frequent, striking without warning. During one particularly bad episode, Amy came over and found me hyperventilating on the bathroom floor. "This has to stop," she insisted, helping me to the couch. "You've found more than enough evidence. What are you waiting for?" It was a valid question. Why was I continuing to collect information when I already had more than enough to confirm my worst fears? The answer came to me slowly. I was scared, terrified of what came next. As painful as this investigation was, it gave me purpose and direction. Confronting James meant stepping into an unknown future, one where the life I had planned no longer existed. Dr. Jenkins helped me understand I was in a holding pattern, gathering evidence as a way to delay making difficult decisions. The question isn't how much more evidence you need, she told me during one session. The question is when you'll feel strong enough to use what you already have. That perspective shifted something in me. I began to redirect some of my investigative energy toward preparing for a life after James. I researched divorce laws in our state. I documented our assets. I consulted discreetly with a divorce attorney, Catherine Maxwell, bringing copies of the evidence I had collected. Catherine was direct and compassionate. "You have more than enough for a divorce that would likely be very favorable to you," she advised. "But we need to be strategic about how and when you confront him." For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of control returning. The path forward was becoming clearer. I wasn't just a victim documenting her victimhood. I was a woman preparing to reclaim her life. Nearly a year after my initial discovery at the restaurant, I had compiled what Catherine called an airtight case: financial records, location data, voice recordings, text and email exchanges, witness statements from Thomas and another colleague who had come forward. I had documented a pattern of deception spanning years involving multiple women, with Stephanie at the center. Yet the final devastating piece of the puzzle came when I decided to follow James on what he claimed was a fishing weekend with clients at Lake Winnipesaukee. I had never followed him physically before, maintaining my distance and relying on technology and documentation. But something told me this trip was significant. I rented a car so he wouldn't recognize mine and kept a safe distance on the highway heading north from Boston. The GPS tracker confirmed he was indeed heading to the lake, but not to any resort or public area. Instead, he drove to a private cabin on the less developed western shore. I parked on a service road about a quarter-mile away and approached on foot, staying hidden among the trees. The cabin was charming, rustic, but well-maintained, with a deck overlooking the water. James's car was parked beside a silver Audi I didn't recognize. Through the large windows, I could see James moving around inside. He seemed relaxed, happy in a way I rarely saw at home anymore. Then Stephanie entered the frame, coming from what appeared to be a bedroom. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, and he turned to kiss her with an easy affection that pierced my heart. I was about to retreat when the cabin door opened and they both came out onto the deck. Stephanie was carrying something. No, someone. A child. A little boy, maybe 2 years old, with James's unmistakable chin and eyes. The world stopped. My knees gave way and I sank to the forest floor, hidden behind a large pine tree. My hands frantically found my phone, and I took photos. Hands shaking so badly, many came out blurred. But some were clear enough. James, Stephanie, and a toddler who could only be their child. I strained to hear their conversation, catching fragments carried on the breeze. "He's getting so big," James said, his voice full of pride. "Smart, too. Gets that from his mother." Stephanie laughed, bouncing the boy on her hip. "And stubborn like his father. Tyler, show Daddy your new words." Tyler. My husband had a son named Tyler. I watched them play together, a perfect family portrait. James taught the boy how to throw pebbles into the lake. They had a picnic on a blanket. They took photos together, smiling broadly. They were comfortable, established. This wasn't new. This was routine. I don't remember much about the drive back to Boston. I was operating on autopilot, vision blurred with tears that wouldn't stop coming. I nearly caused an accident, swerving into another lane before correcting at the last moment. The blaring horn barely registered. Back home, I called Amy, unable to form coherent sentences. She came over immediately, and I showed her the photos, the ultimate evidence of James's double life. "Oh my God, Nat," she whispered, scrolling through the images. "He has a child. How is that even possible?" 3 years. I said, my voice hollow. Stephanie's been in his life for 3 years. The timing fits. Amy stayed with me that night, worried about leaving me alone in such a state. We sat on my living room floor, surrounded by evidence of my unraveled marriage, printouts of emails, credit card statements, location histories, while I alternated between numbness and crushing pain. "What now?" Amy asked gently as the first light of dawn filtered through the windows. "I don't know," I admitted. I thought I was prepared for anything but this. The sound of a key in the front door interrupted us. James was home earlier than expected. Amy and I frantically gathered the evidence, shoving it into her overnight bag, just as James walked in. His expression changed from surprise to suspicion seeing Amy there so early. "Girls' night?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Amy had a fight with Mark." I lied smoothly, surprising myself with how easily the deception came. "She needed a place to crash." James nodded, accepting the explanation. "Everything okay now?" Amy stood slinging her bag over her shoulder. "Getting there. Thanks for letting me stay, Nat." As she left, James approached me, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind, just as Stephanie had done to him at the cabin. "I missed you this weekend," he murmured against my hair. I forced myself to lean back against him to not stiffen or pull away. "How was fishing?" "Good. Caught a few bass. Not as many as Carter, but he's been doing this longer." He spun a tale about fishing spots and client conversations, all fiction. "You're the only woman in my life, you know that, right?" he said later that evening, apropos of nothing as we prepared for bed. The statement, so brazen, so completely false, nearly broke my composure. I almost confronted him, then almost threw 3 years of evidence in his face. But Amy's parting words echoed in my mind. "Don't react now. Not when you're this raw. Stick to the plan." So I smiled, kissed him, and said, "I know." The greatest performance of my life. That night, lying beside the stranger I had married, I made my final decision. There would be no counseling, no attempts to repair what had never been real. The man sleeping next to me wasn't just a cheater. He was someone capable of building an entire parallel life, complete with a child, while maintaining our marriage as if it were his only commitment. I would end this, but on my terms, with my dignity intact, with every advantage the law could give me. Catherine had advised me to continue gathering evidence until we had everything needed for the strongest possible position in divorce proceedings. I had initially thought that would take months more, but after the lake house revelation, I realized I had more than enough. The next morning, I contacted Catherine and told her I was ready to move forward. "It's time," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in months. "I'm done being the only one who doesn't know the truth about my own marriage." The revelation about James's child was a turning point for me. The shock and pain crystallized into resolve and clarity. This was no longer just about documenting betrayal. It was about reclaiming my life and securing my future. I needed a strategy, not just for ending my marriage, but for emerging from its ruins stronger and more secure. I approached this new phase with the same methodical focus I had applied to the investigation, but now with a healthier purpose. Dr. Jenkins helped me shift my perspective from victim to advocate for myself. "You've spent a year learning the truth about James," she said during one session. "Now it's time to rediscover the truth about Natalie. Who are you beyond this marriage? What do you want your life to look like after this chapter closes?" These questions became my new North Star. While continuing to document James's ongoing deception, I simultaneously began rebuilding myself and securing my position. First came financial independence. I opened separate bank accounts at a different bank and began gradually transferring my portion of our joint savings. Not everything which would alert James, but enough to create a safety net. I updated my resume and portfolio, securing additional freelance design work that I could take with me if I needed to relocate after the divorce. Catherine, my divorce attorney, was instrumental in helping me understand our marital assets and how to document them properly. "Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state," she explained. "The court will aim for fair, not necessarily equal division of assets. Your detailed records of his financial infidelity will work in your favor." I hired a private investigator recommended by Catherine to fill gaps in my evidence and to provide professional documentation that would stand up better in court than my amateur surveillance. The PI, a former police detective named Michael, was thorough and discreet, providing additional evidence of James's relationship with Stephanie and their child, as well as financial transactions I had missed. In 20 years of doing this work, I've rarely seen someone as methodical as you, Michael told me when he delivered his final report. Most clients are reacting emotionally, but you've built a case like a prosecutor. His words were validating. The pain was still there, a constant ache beneath every action and decision, but it no longer controlled me. I was channeling it into productive energy. My relationship with Amy deepened through this period. She became not just a supporter, but a collaborator in my renewal. She accompanied me to appointments with financial advisors, helped me research new apartments for after the divorce, and most importantly, reminded me to occasionally step away from the divorce preparations to simply live and breathe. "You're not just preparing for divorce," she said during one of our weekend hikes, a new habit we had formed to get me out of the house and away from James. "You're practicing for your new life. Finding joy now is part of the process." I reconnected with family members I had drifted away from during my marriage, rebuilding my support network beyond Amy. My older sister Jennifer flew in from California for a week, ostensibly to visit, but really to help me sort through which household items I wanted to keep and which I was prepared to leave behind. "I never liked him," Jennifer admitted as we sorted through kitchen items, marking mine with small blue stickers hidden underneath. "He was too smooth, too perfect. Nobody's that perfect unless they're hiding something." "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked, not accusingly but curiously. She shrugged. "Would you have believed me? Love makes us defensive. You would have chosen him, and it might have created a rift between us. I decided having you in my life, even with him attached, was better than risking losing you entirely." Her honesty was refreshing, and I appreciated that she hadn't said, "I told you so," or made me feel foolish for being deceived. Instead, she focused on the future, helping me envision my new life with enthusiasm rather than dread. Physical self-care became another focus. The weight loss and insomnia that had plagued me during the initial investigation had taken a toll. I began working with a nutritionist to restore my health, joined a yoga studio for both exercise and mental calming, and established sleep routines that helped combat the persistent insomnia. As my body grew stronger, so did my resolve. I was no longer the shell-shocked woman who had followed her husband to a restaurant almost 2 years earlier. I was becoming someone new. Still connected to the woman I had been before James, but tempered by experience, more aware of my strength and resilience. Throughout this time, I maintained my performance as the unsuspecting wife. It was exhausting but necessary. James continued his pattern, seemingly confident in his ability to maintain both relationships indefinitely. He occasionally mentioned wanting to start a family. When the time was right, a suggestion that now made my skin crawl, knowing he already had a child with another woman. There were close calls. Once James almost discovered the private investigator's report I had accidentally left in my desk drawer instead of my secure lockbox. Another time he questioned why I had opened a separate checking account. I explained it was for freelance income to simplify tax filing. But overall, he remained blissfully unaware that his carefully constructed house of cards was about to collapse. By the 5-year mark of my investigation, almost half our marriage, I had compiled what Catherine called one of the most comprehensive cases of infidelity she had seen in her 20-year career. The evidence spanned financial records, photographic proof, witness testimonies, electronic communications, and location data, all meticulously organized and documented. "We're ready whenever you are," Catherine told me during our final preparation meeting. "Based on this evidence, I'm confident we can secure a settlement that reflects the extent of his deception and protects your financial future." For the first time in years, I felt completely ready. My support network was in place. My separate finances were secured. I had signed a lease on a new apartment prepaid for 6 months with funds James couldn't trace. I had moved irreplaceable personal items, family heirlooms, journals, photos from before our relationship, to a storage unit. Most importantly, I had rebuilt my sense of self outside of my identity as James's wife. The final piece fell into place when James told me he would be away for a long weekend at a partners retreat in Vermont. My tracking data and the PI's report confirmed he was actually planning to be at the lake house with Stephanie and their son. The night before he was set to leave, I set up my phone to record our conversation as he packed. "I'll miss you this weekend," I said, leaning against the doorframe of our bedroom, watching him select ties with practiced precision. "I'll miss you too," he replied automatically. "But it's only 3 days. I'll call you each night." "What's on the agenda for this retreat?" I asked innocently. Without hesitation, James launched into a detailed description of sessions and activities that would never take place, even mentioning specific partners who would be giving presentations. His ability to fabricate such elaborate lies without a single tell was still chilling to witness. "You've been working so hard lately," I said. "This retreat sounds intense. Are you sure it won't just be more stress?" James smiled the same warm smile that had once made me feel safe and loved. "It'll be fine. The location is beautiful. Mountain views, hiking trails. I might even get some time to relax. Take pictures for me," I suggested. Of course, he agreed easily, knowing he would return with carefully selected photos of Vermont landscapes, downloaded from the internet, as he had done before. As I watched him continue packing, I felt a strange sense of calm. This would be the last time I would witness this particular performance, the last time I would pretend to believe him, the final act in a play that had run for far too long. When he finished packing, James pulled me into an embrace. "I love you," he said, kissing my forehead. "You know that, right?" I looked up at him directly into his eyes, and for the first time in years, I didn't hide my true thoughts. "I know exactly how much you love me, James." He didn't notice the double meaning, the edge in my voice. He simply smiled and held me closer, confident in his control of our narrative. Little did he know I had just recorded his final performance, the last piece of evidence I would need before closing the curtain on our marriage for good. The confrontation was 5 years in the making. I could have chosen many approaches: a dramatic scene at home, an ambush at his office, or even exposure at a family event. Instead, I chose symmetry. The same restaurant where I had first discovered his betrayal would be where I revealed my knowledge of it. I made reservations at Sorolina for the evening after James returned from his retreat. I told him I wanted to celebrate his partnership and successful quarter feeding his ego while setting the stage. He readily agreed, perhaps relieved that I hadn't questioned the obviously photoshopped pictures he had sent from Vermont. I arrived at the restaurant 30 minutes early, requesting the same corner table where we had sat on our anniversary 5 years ago. I was dressed impeccably in a fitted black dress that displayed the results of months of rebuilding my physical health. My hair was styled makeup flawless, not for James, but for me. This was my moment of reclamation, and I wanted to feel my absolute best. The maitre d' showed me to our table, and I ordered a glass of champagne while waiting. I didn't feel nervous. The years of preparation had distilled any anxiety into pure, focused determination. James arrived precisely on time, looking handsome and confident in his tailored suit. He smiled when he saw me, that practiced smile that had once made my heart race but now only confirmed how little I knew the man behind it. "You look stunning," he said, kissing my cheek before sitting down. "Special occasion I forgot about." "In a way," I replied cryptically. I thought it was time for a meaningful conversation about our future. His eyes lit up with interest. In previous discussions about our future, I had carefully implied interest in starting a family, soon knowing it would please him despite his existing secret family. The waiter came to take our orders. James selected an expensive bottle of wine and recommended the seafood dishes he knew I preferred. I let him play the role of attentive husband one last time. Once our wine was poured and we were alone again, I raised my glass. "To truth," I said. James clinked his glass against mine, looking slightly puzzled but still smiling. "To truth." I took a sip, set down my glass, and reached for my purse. From it I withdrew a thick manila envelope, placing it carefully on the table between us. "What's this?" James asked, still smiling, but with confusion creeping into his expression. This, I said calmly, is our marriage, James, or rather the truth of it. I pushed the envelope toward him. He hesitated before opening it, perhaps already sensing that something had shifted. Inside were divorce papers prepared by Catherine and ready for his signature. On top of them was a single photograph, James with Stephanie and Tyler at the lake house taken just days ago. The color drained from his face as he stared at the photo. His eyes darted up to mine, searching for some explanation, some way this could be anything other than what it clearly was. Natalie, I can explain. Save it. I interrupted, my voice steady. I know everything, James. I have known for 5 years. His confusion deepened. 5 years? What are you talking about? Our 5th anniversary dinner right here at this restaurant. You asked me to wait in the car while you supposedly retrieved your phone. Instead, you met Stephanie at the bar. I followed you, James. I saw you together. I heard you, and I've been documenting your double life ever since. For perhaps the first time since I had known him, James was completely speechless. The practiced charm, the ready explanations, the smooth deflections, all abandoned him in the face of such comprehensive exposure. I continued maintaining the calm, measured tone I had rehearsed with Dr. Jenkins. I know about the lake house. I know about Tyler. I know about the secret credit cards and the private email accounts. I know about the other women besides Stephanie. I know that some of your colleagues are aware of your activities. I know everything, James. He reached for his wineglass with a visibly shaking hand. How? He finally managed. Methodically, I replied. The same way you built your deception. One piece at a time until the full picture was clear. James glanced around the restaurant, lowering his voice. We should discuss this at home, not here. No, I said firmly. We'll discuss it here where it began, where I first saw who you really are. His shock was beginning to give way to calculation. I could see him assessing options, looking for angles, trying to regain control. Natalie, whatever you think you know, there are explanations. Relationships are complicated. Stop. I cut him off. I'm not interested in your explanations or justifications. I'm here to tell you what happens next. I pulled out another document from my purse, a summary prepared by Catherine outlining the evidence we had collected and the terms of the divorce settlement we were proposing. You have 2 options, I explained. Option 1, you sign these papers tonight agreeing to an uncontested divorce with the terms outlined here. The financial settlement is fair. I'm not trying to ruin you despite what you've done. You'll maintain your relationship with Stephanie and Tyler without the mess of public exposure. Your colleagues, family, and friends will know we've divorced, but not necessarily why. James looked at the settlement terms, his lawyer's mind already analyzing. And option 2, he asked cautiously. Option 2, you refuse to sign, and we go to court. Every piece of evidence I've collected over 5 years becomes public record. Every email, every recording, every photo. Your partners at the firm, your clients, your parents, your friends. Everyone will see who you really are and what you've been doing all these years. James paled further at the mention of his parents, who had always viewed him as the perfect son. You wouldn't. I would, I said simply. Not out of vengeance, but because I refuse to be the only one living in reality while you continue your fiction. One way or another, the truth comes out, James. You just get to decide how widely it's known. He stared at the documents, then back at me, reevaluating everything he thought he knew about the woman he had married. How did you do all this without me knowing all these years? The same way you maintained your deception, commitment to the role. The difference is, I was finding truth while you were creating lies. The waiter approached with our appetizers, and we fell silent. After he left, James pushed his plate away, appetite gone. I never meant to hurt you, he said quietly. The statement was so absurd, so completely divorced from the reality of his actions, that I actually laughed, a short, incredulous sound that caused nearby diners to glance our way. You maintained a second family for years, I said. You have a child, James. A child you never told me about while discussing starting our own family. You systematically lied to me every single day. If you didn't mean to hurt me, what exactly did you think you were doing?" He had no answer for that. Instead, he asked, "When did you stop loving me?" The question caught me off guard. I considered it honestly. I don't know exactly. It was gradual. Each lie, each discovery chipped away at what I felt until there was nothing left but a need to understand the full scope of the deception. At some point, the man I loved disappeared, completely replaced by a stranger who just happened to share his face. James looked down at the divorce papers again. "What if I want to fix this? What if I end things with Stephanie, get therapy, rebuild your trust?" "That's not an option," I said firmly. "This isn't a negotiation or a starting point for reconciliation. This is the end. The only choice you have is how cleanly we separate." For a moment, something like real emotion flashed across his face, perhaps the first genuine reaction of the evening. "I did love you, Natalie. In my way." "Your way wasn't love, James. It was possession. You wanted to keep everything. The respectable wife, the exciting mistress, the secret child, the admiration of colleagues who thought you were pulling off some impressive juggling act. Real love doesn't treat people like collectibles." We sat in silence for several minutes, the untouched food cooling between us. Finally, James reached for the pen I had placed beside the documents. "Everyone has secrets," he said, a last attempt at normalizing his behavior. "Secrets, yes. Secret families, no." I watched as he signed the divorce papers, his signature sharp and angry on the page. "Thank you for making this easier for both of us." I gathered the signed documents and returned them to my purse. Then I stood, leaving cash on the table for our untouched meal. "For what it's worth," James said as I prepared to leave, "I am sorry." I looked at him one last time, this man who had been the center of my world, whose approval and love I had sought for so long. I felt nothing but a quiet relief that it was finally over. "I believe you're sorry you got caught," I replied. "The rest is between you and your conscience." I walked out of the restaurant with my head high, feeling lighter with each step. The cool evening air felt like freedom on my skin. The future stretched before me, uncertain, but entirely my own. As agreed in our settlement, James moved out of our home the following week, taking only his personal belongings. I lived there temporarily while finalizing the sale of the property, another condition of our agreement. The divorce was processed quickly with none of the usual battles over assets or accusations. The evidence I had accumulated left no room for negotiation. 2 months after our confrontation at the restaurant, I received an unexpected email from Stephanie. She wanted to meet, she said, to tell me her side of the story. Against Amy's advice, I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe far from both our usual neighborhoods. She looked different from the confident woman I had seen with James, smaller somehow, nervous. "He lied to me too," she said after we had ordered coffee. "I knew he was married, but he told me you two were separated, living together only for appearances while quietly arranging divorce. He said you were cold, career-obsessed, uninterested in children." I wasn't surprised by James's lies, only by Stephanie's need to share them with me. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know I'm not a monster," she said, twisting a napkin in her hands. "I would never have been with a man I thought was happy in his marriage, and I would never have kept Tyler from you if I'd known the truth." "Did you love him?" I asked, curious despite myself. She considered the question carefully. "I thought I did. Now I'm not sure I ever knew the real James. I think we were both in love with versions of him that don't actually exist." There was something cathartic about this strange conversation with the woman who had unknowingly shared my husband. We weren't friends, would never be friends, but there was a connection in our shared experience of James's deception. "What will you do now?" I asked. "Start over," she said simply. "Focus on Tyler. Find out who I am without the drama James brought into my life." She hesitated. "I'm sorry, Natalie, for my part in hurting you." I nodded, accepting her apology without offering forgiveness she hadn't directly asked for. We finished our coffees in silence before parting ways, unlikely to ever meet again. The following year was one of rebuilding and discovery. I moved into a sunlit apartment in Cambridge close to the river. I launched my own graphic design firm specializing in branding for women-owned businesses. I traveled. Solo trips to places James had always dismissed as uninteresting. I reconnected with old passions, painting, hiking, live music, that had gradually faded during my marriage. Dr. Jenkins continued to be a guide through this transition, helping me process not just the betrayal, but my response to it, the years of investigation, the calculated confrontation. You turned a devastating situation into an opportunity for profound self-knowledge, she told me during our final session. Not many people have the strength to do that. Exactly 1 year after the divorce was finalized, I ran into James unexpectedly at a grocery store. He looked older, diminished somehow. When he saw me, a complex mixture of emotions crossed his face: shame, regret, and something like awe. "You look well," he said awkwardly. I realized with some surprise that I truly was well. The pain had receded to a dull memory. The anger had dissipated, and what remained was a calm certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. "I am well," I confirmed. "You?" He shrugged, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Getting by. The firm asked me to step down from partnership after everything." I nodded, not feeling any particular satisfaction at his downfall, just a detached recognition that actions have consequences. "You know," he said hesitantly, "I've had a lot of time to think. I still don't understand how you did it. Maintained that investigation for years without me having any idea." "I learned from the best," I replied, allowing myself a small smile. "You were an excellent teacher in the art of living a double life." He winced at that. "I deserved that." "Yes," I agreed. "You did." We stood in awkward silence for a moment before I excused myself to continue shopping. As I walked away, I realized I had finally achieved what had seemed impossible during those dark days of discovery: freedom from the emotional hold James had over me. I felt nothing for him, not hate, not love, not even anger. He was simply someone I used to know, a chapter in my life that had ended. That night, sitting on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sunset over the Charles River, I reflected on the long journey from that night at the restaurant to the present moment. The investigation that had consumed years of my life had served its purpose, not just in securing a favorable divorce settlement, but in teaching me my own strength, resilience, and capacity for renewal. The betrayal would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined me. What defined me now were the choices I had made in response, the decision to uncover the truth, to reclaim my power, to rebuild my life on my own terms. In the end, that was the real discovery of my 5-year investigation, not just who James truly was, but who I could become when faced with the unthinkable. I had followed my husband and recorded 5 years of lies, but in doing so, I had found my way back to the truth of myself. I sometimes think about how differently things might have turned out if I'd just waited in the car that night. If I'd accepted the silver bracelet and the lies that came with it. If I'd chosen comfortable illusion over painful reality. But I've learned that the truth, however difficult, is always the path to genuine freedom. My journey taught me that trust should be earned continuously, not granted indefinitely. That red flags aren't just decorative, they're warnings. That your intuition is often recognizing patterns your conscious mind is trying to ignore. Most importantly, I learned that facing betrayal doesn't have to break you. It can become the foundation upon which you build a stronger, more authentic life. The healing wasn't instant. For months after the divorce, I still had moments of anger, questioning how I could have been so thoroughly deceived. But gradually these feelings gave way to gratitude for the lessons learned and the strength discovered. I no longer view those 5 years as lost time, but as a necessary passage to becoming who I am today. 2 years after my divorce, I met someone new. A kind, transparent man who understands why I sometimes need reassurance, why trust comes gradually for me. Our relationship is built on honesty from the foundation up. When he says he'll be somewhere, he is. When he makes a promise, he keeps it. Simple integrity, once so foreign to my experience of love, now forms the cornerstone of this new chapter. I still have the recordings, the photographs, the documented evidence of James's deception stored in a secure cloud folder I haven't opened in years. I keep them not out of lingering attachment, but as a reminder of my capacity to face difficult truths and emerge stronger. Perhaps someday I'll delete them all when the lessons they represent are so deeply integrated that I no longer need the reminder. If you're watching this, and something in my story resonates with your experience, please know you're not alone. Trust your instincts. Document what needs documenting. Build your support network. And remember that discovering deception, however painful, is always preferable to living within it. Would you have followed your spouse that night or waited in the car? Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story helped you in any way, please like and subscribe. Your support helps me continue sharing these difficult but important experiences. And remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you truth and authenticity in all your relationships.